You may call me Mother Ascani, leader of Clan Ascani.
The X-Men 97 finally released its last episode. It's everything we could have asked. We are left to wonder about the various events that will follow. In the usual fashion, this episode saw many things coming together and possible future events being references. It's unclear where we will go now as the X-Men team is divided into two timelines. One is the early days of their past enemies, Apocalypse, who might be involved in bringing them to this timeline as revenge for the Genosha massacre. However, Scott and Jean seems to have gone to a whole new timeline in the future that hasn't been touched before. However, a familiar face in this timeline confirms that they might not be a mid-enemy, and there's a chance that the leader of this group of rebels might be related to them too. Let's unravel what the Clan Ascani is and who their leader, Mother Ascani, is. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
Bright morrow.
What is Clan Ascani? The X-Men 97 series takes us to a new world and stirs things with every passing episode. There, we were looking at the X-Men coming together to fight Bastion and prevent the asteroid from hitting planet Earth. And suddenly, all the X-Men got pulled in by someone to alternate timeline. We are very well used to the idea that they haven't died, and hence, when Bishop came to Forge with a plan to rescue the X-Men, it became clear that something's been cooking. Right before the episode ends, we witness our favorite mutants separated from each other and in different lands in a group. The group, comprised of Xavier, Magneto, Nightcrawler, and Rogue, ends way back in the past and come across En-Sabah Nur, the man who would become Apocalypse. Considering that Apocalypse did pop up in the episode later, it's fair to say that he might have had a hand in this displacement time. But what happens to the other group of mutants is a little bit more crazy, as we see Cyclops and Jean Grey in the future coming across a clan of rebels called the Clan Ascani. And it seems that they have taken the responsibility of raising a young Cable. The Clan Ascani is a religious order of rebel fighters dedicated to upholding the principles of Charles Xavier's X-Men. A brighter future for both mutants and humankind. Just like no group is defined better in the Marvel Universe, but by the primary enemy they are going against. Clan Ascani fought against Apocalypse ever since he planned to take over the world in the 37th century. The name of this band of heroes means Family of the Outsider, and their primary philosophy revolves around concepts like what is, and thanks for today, please for tomorrow. Unlike any other such group of heroes in the X-Men storyline, this clan holds up the X-Men and Xavier himself as some religious figures. However, the more surprising factor about this group is that it was formed by Rachel Summers, Cyclops' and Jean Grey's daughter. She came into this alternate reality following the days of future past events, as one version of her that got split by the time stream went way ahead in the future and formed this resistance against the apocalypse. Rachel found a wasteland in the future and gathered mutants to create the clan. This group had mutants from across different timelines. Talking about time stream, one of the other primary objectives of the Clan Ascani is to preserve and nurture the sacred timeline. But before we discuss the clan further, let's examine how Rachel Summers became the clan leader, known as Mother Ascani, and ended up having one of the most badass arcs in the Marvel Universe. Also, you might witness the origin story of one of the most badass X-Men character along the way. Hold your horses, because the story concerns being in the right place and time, and many other moments involving being displaced in time. Backstory of Mother Ascani. Remember that lady who led the Clan Ascani when Cyclops and Jean encountered them? As we explained, that was Rachel Summers, a time stream split version of her. Yes, that sounds complicated, but let's dive into the events to understand the Clan Ascani's origin properly. Splitting times. Following her adventures with the Excalibur, there came a situation where Rachel had to take a significant step to save one of her colleagues. Captain Britain somehow managed to get lost in the time stream and couldn't find a way to return. There were moments where he managed to switch bodies with Rachel, who had a rather messed up temporal arc herself, and Rachel tried to keep this information away from the rest of the teams. Eventually, Rachel sacrifices herself by switching places with Captain Britain, bringing a somewhat crazy anomaly to her already crazy character arc. Instead of getting an alternate version of herself, she was split into two separate beings. But there can be more than two. One had a terrible fate as she reached the end of time, where she was held prisoner by Gon, a prisoner there himself. But the second one went right into the future around the 37th century. And there we have the very beginning of the Clan Ascani. Number 2. The Clan. Upon arriving in the 37th century, Rachel discovered that it had been 100 years since the apocalypse had taken over the world. Anyone who opposed his rule could be killed at any point, but certain opposition groups existed. Most of these groups sound religious, heavily dedicated to the modern-day mutants being their holy figures. There's something about how these groups, even the clan itself, have their set beliefs that make it a brilliant take on the concept of the future, and the writers deserve their due credit for that. But getting back to the story, one of the oppositions to Apocalypse's rule was the Order of the Witnesses, a mutant-seeking group, and they believed that Rachel was a descendant of the mutants that had fought Apocalypse in the modern day. Yeah, that's some cool listen al-Gaib stuff right there. Rachel would have her attempts at killing Apocalypse and come across some rather exciting prelates of his. In the following years, Rachel formed the Clan Ascani with followers who shared the tenets we discussed earlier. She would let anyone join her clan after due trending, and one of the clan's significant practices involved meditation while levitating upside down. Some of the very first Ascani priests were Qua, an Atlantean element, and Lexi, the last survivor of the Clone Sisterhood, one of the first mutants Rachel encountered after falling into this timeline. Following the rise of the Ascani, Diamanda Nero, responsible for killing off the Xavier Collective, released the humanoid virus plague against them and the Apocalypse's precursors. Even though the prelates would die right away, Rachel had a vision right before her death, and this vision would become the very arc of the upcoming event. Later, Rachel would be reborn as a Phoenix Firebird and face off against Nero, a situation in which Rachel unleashed the wrath of the Phoenix. Eventually, the power of the Phoenix started taking over Nero, and she started begging Rachel. This moment is when Rachel would take the power of the Phoenix and release it into the cosmos. Yes, this would confirm her position as Mother Ascani amongst the clan, and the vision would soon come true. Something like the Chosen One. You already know how religious this entire thing has started to get, and it only gets better when you realize that it has elements of Frank Herbert's Dune spilled all over. The ancient X-Men were among the beliefs of this clan, and eventually, there came a prophecy that the Ascani son would be their messiah. Most of the people in this clan were psychics, and they used a scimitar that would be based on psionic energy. The clan developed their language and a symbol based on the phoenix and the scarred eye, based on the one you might have witnessed in Cable's eye. After 100 years of this clan, Rachel, or Mother Ascani, as she is now called, decided to fulfill the prophecy of the Ascanison, and to do this, she sent Sister Ascani to the past. Now, there's a plot you might remember in X-Men 97 when the infected baby was given to Bishop, who went to the future with it. Similarly, Sister Ascani brought this baby to the future as it was infected by the techno-organic virus by Apocalypse, and everyone started wondering if the baby would survive. Mother Ascani cloned the child out of fear that it wouldn't survive, but eventually it managed to make it through. But that's not where this story ends, because right then, the Canaanites attacked their base and started the massacre of the Clan Ascani. Most of them were killed, including Mother Ascani herself. Bulk was ordered to get the babies out of danger, but he only managed to save Nathan. Who knew Cable had such a complicated storyline? Bringing up Nathan. Mother Ascani had somehow survived the massacre, but she was severely wounded. So she decided to bring Nathan, Scott, and Jean's original parents back to the future to raise the child. But she didn't get them in their original form, fearing it might kill them, and instead gave them a body that was cloned from their descendants, which was very much similar to them. Meanwhile, Apocalypse's loyal Chivairi returns to the future and takes hold of Nathan. The trio of Scott, Jean, and Mother Ascani went and rescued the child, but in the process, Mother Ascani got wounded and went into a coma. Scott and Jean took different identities, Slim and Red Dayspring, to raise Nathan and become part of another rebel alliance called the Clan Rebellion. Yes, this clan was inspired by the original Clan Ascani. Also, do you realize that this is the only time that the entire crazy and wild family of the Summers managed to get together? Even though there is a sufficient lack of clarity regarding who is related to whom and how. Would this Rachel be counted as... Nah, let's not get into that. Rachel's death. While it was assumed to have become routine, eventually the virus given to Nathan by Apocalypse flared up, and his condition became terminal. During this time, Mother Ascani spoke to Nathan telepathically to fight back against the virus and not let it kill him. Later, the trio of Scott, Jean, and Nathan managed to kill Apocalypse when its loyal servant Chivairi betrayed him. On the other hand, Mother Ascani, who had started all this, finally passed away, as if it was the end of an era in the X-Men universe. But after dying, she returns in her astral form and asks one last favor from Jean, to call herself Phoenix again in Rachel's honor. Astral Mother Ascani. Yes, this is that Obi-Wan Kenobi thingy, as Rachel used to guide Nathan in her astral form, and even though there were times when it felt like he was faltering from his mission, she would be present to ensure he didn't. During one particular situation, Rachel took Nathan to see a timeline where Cable's friends had died in a battle against Ahab and his Sentinels. Watching this would bring back Cable's drive to continue his mission. No wonder he made 100 attempts to prevent Bastion from going through with his plans in the X-Men 97 series. What happened to the Clan Ascani? Even though Apocalypse was dead, Cable faced an enemy in Strife. Remember the clone of Nathan made when it was assumed that Nathan wouldn't survive? That's him. Strife and the new Canaanites tried to take on the throne of Apocalypse after his death, and this would be the new enemy that the Clan Ascani would have to face. Strife decided to travel into the future to cause chaos, but Cable followed him to keep with the ethics of Ascani, which required preserving the timeline. Here, Cable tries to ensure that the events of Apocalypse's fate go as they had in the future. Even Blacksmith, who had been a close ally of Mother Ascani, traveled into the modern day to ensure that Cable kept with the ways of the Ascani and stayed within the predetermined path. Eventually, Cable would go on various desperate moves to ensure that the principles of the Ascani survived and made these attempts in modern time. He tried to establish some of these, and one of these attempts involved teaching a group of female mutants called the Dark Sisterhood, but it turned out to be a failed attempt. Later, he even tried to promote Ascani's ideas in Rumikistan after she had taken over it and tried to build a nation there. But eventually, things went wrong when Cable's attempt disrupted the sacred timeline, and he started giving up on his primary objective. Blacksmith had seen that this would result in a timeline where the extinction of the mutants became a significant threat. To put things back to their normal path, Blacksmith hired a younger Cable to go into the modern day, and this Cable would kill the older Cable. Following this, he would undo the significant change that would have brought the fate of the mutants into a horrible situation. But this crazy story deserves its own video. Powers and abilities. Rachel Summers was the child of Cyclops and Jean, and no wonder Sinister tried to get their child when he cloned Jean, because Rachel is an absolute blast of superpowers. While she inherited most of her mother's powers, she also managed to get the effects of the Phoenix. Her powers as Mother Ascani only got amplified because of the involvement of the events in her interaction with it. Now imagine Marvel Girl's powers like telepathy, psionic blast, astral projection, telekinesis, and even time manipulation, but they all have gone to their maximum levels. No wonder she became an utterly religious figure among her followers and managed to guide the team that finally killed the Apocalypse in the future. Yes, this is probably one of the most badass arcs from the X-Men comic books, and we might get a chance to see it unfold in the X-Men 97 series. Marvel is pleased with the show's success, and it will be long before we get a second season where these characters come to life. We might witness Jean and Cyclops finally have the gateway they had been talking about all this time. Even though it won't be on their terms, it is as close to a family reunion as possible. Maybe this would be the beginning of the solo adventures for the X-Men as the rest of the team deals with Apocalypse and his early days. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.